But today I want to keep it nice and simple. And for people that have ended up by accident for this review, is to review M3GAN, which came out a couple of weekends ago, directed by Gerard Johnstone, and is currently in cinemas. So M3GAN's a funny one. I'm very much a horror fan. I'm sort of one of those people, but will always be kind of looking to see what's coming up. I have a lot of sort of YouTubers that I follow, horror YouTubers, and this was just one of those films on the list of films to watch in 2023. And it sort of went off my radar a bit. I guess it's a killer doll movie, or so it seems. So there wasn't much excitement about it. It was kind of like, yeah, I'll see that, but I thought it was going to be very kind of naff Blumhouse. I mean, it is a Blumhouse movie, but we all know that some of those Blumhouse movies are rough. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just catch it on streaming, or we'll see. And it's funny. It's one of those sort of films that over time, you just keep hearing people say, actually, this is pretty good. Not what I was expecting. I follow some YouTubers. I think Chris Stuckman is someone that I've watched for years, and I kind of use him as a bit of a decent bar on films. And he famously kind of only reviews films now that he likes, and he thought it was great. So I went into it a lot more open-minded, and yeah, I got to say this film is really good fun, and not just good fun. It's actually got something to say for itself, which is very unusual for what it is. Obviously, we've had Child's Play. We've had a film called Mummy Dearest, which I used to see in Blockbuster years ago as a VHS on the shelf about a killer doll. And there's a definite kind of cheesiness with a kind of killer doll movie. And yeah, this film is camp. I've had a lot of people kind of refer to it as a camp horror. But I think that's more just through virtue of the fact that it's about a small blonde killer doll. Like, how can that not be camp? But I would say, actually, the filmmakers kind of believe in it more than that. It's not just a sort of silly camp killer doll movie. That it has some things to say. All right, maybe those things to say aren't, they're not going to kind of change the world. But, it has thoughts around grief. It has thoughts around how to raise children, and kind of how to kind of help them find their way in the world. So just to wind things back. So M3GAN is directed by Gerard Johnstone. It's just been out, and it follows a character called Gemma, played by Alison Williams, who, by virtue of a kind of opening incident in the film, becomes her niece's guardian. And the niece, Katie, comes to live with her, and it's very much a case of someone does not want to be a parent. Gemma has a career as a sort of toy designer, but a very specific AI toy designer. She's been kind of pioneering this like Furby-like technology. But in the background, she's sort of doing her own thing and developing M3GAN, which is more of a companion doll for little girls, also little boys, I'm assuming, but it will definitely be marketed at girls. And it's supposed to be like a surrogate sort of friend and sort of guardian type thing. So that's all going on in the background. And yeah, she's not a great parent. She just doesn't, obviously, it doesn't come natural to her. She's a likable character, but she's very flawed. And this will kind of come back throughout the film. I don't really know why I like her, but she is likable, and you kind of root for her. And obviously she's struggling being a parent, so she kind of pulls M3GAN out of development and sort of starts road testing it with Katie to see how she's going to respond. And M3GAN's kind of primary directive is to kind of keep Katie safe and to protect her. And as you can imagine, it's a horror film, so chaos ensues. And actually, yeah, she takes that kind of prime directive to an sort of extreme end. So that's the film in a nutshell. It's, as I said, it's really good fun. It's not in any way violent. I think when they started marketing the film, they realized that it was getting quite a lot of attention on TikTok and amongst a sort of teen crowd. And obviously with too much gore, obviously they can't then show that to kids in cinemas. So they stripped a lot of the gore out, and it goes quite far with it. You still get a decent amount of violence, but you can kind of see where they cut it. And I actually don't think it makes that much of a difference to the film. I think the violent bits actually are less scary bits. Actually, the tension is in what's she going to do next, and what's going to happen. So I don't think that hurts the film in any way. But yeah, this film just has kind of no right to be as good as it was. It was really fun. As I said, Alison Williams is great. I don't know if you've seen her. Obviously, you probably would have seen her in Get Out. She was also in a film called The Perfection, which is a very rare lesbian violin horror movie, which you don't get many of. And she was great in that. She's becoming a kind of real scream queen, to kind of coin a bit of a hackneyed phrase. But as I said, she's really likable. You kind of go with Gemma, even though she's making a lot of questionable decisions and not doing kind of the best job by her niece, who's just suffered quite a traumatic loss. And M3GAN sort of becomes a sort of surrogate mum to her. What I will say is it's one of those films where the credits roll and you're like, yeah, well, very well. Like, we end on a very happy note. It's a happy ending, but she is about to go down. Like, there are going to be legal problems for her. Like, she is going rogue at work. She's developing something which ultimately ends up killing a lot of people. But we sort of end on this like, oh, well, we're all saved, without sort of diving into too many spoilers. So, yeah, it's great. I think what's interesting is the film was directed by Gerard Johnstone, as I mentioned. He directed a film called Housebound, I think back in 2014. And the level of humor in the film is very similar. I have a real issue with horror films that really kind of like flatten the scares by bringing in jokes. I thought It Chapter 2 did it really, really badly, and it really ruined the film for me. And it's a similar thing that you see in Marvel films, where they just seem to not quite believe in themselves. So they kind of have to take the piss out of everything, and everything has to be a joke. Whereas in M3GAN and sort of, in Housebound, if you want to go back and watch it, there's a subtlety to the humor. Like, it's almost to the point where sometimes characters said things where me and my boyfriend, who were watching it together at the cinema, were like, did they just say that? Like, that's really funny. And it almost took a few seconds to sometimes process the jokes, because they weren't kind of sold in such an obvious way. And it's brilliant. Like, it just adds such another dimension to the film that you just wouldn't have expected from just your standard kind of killer doll movie. So I'm going to keep this brief. It's my first video. And obviously we'll get into scoring as we go. M3GAN for me is a solid 7 out of 10. It's not going to change the world, but it's just better than you thought it would be. I'm definitely going to rewatch it. It's probably one I probably will, make my parents sit through next Christmas. It's a really fun little movie. And yeah, it completely kind of blew me out of the water in terms of what I was expecting it to be, and what I got. So yeah, on that note, also check out Housebound. As I said, it's a New Zealand-based horror. M3GAN was also filmed in Auckland, although you wouldn't know it from seeing it. And it's just, again, scary. It's got real moments of tension, moments of violence, but also just moments of really good humor. And I love humor when it isn't signposted in such an obvious way. So yeah, go check it out. So today's my first video. I'm absolutely full of cold, but I just wanted to kind of crack on with it. As I said, my channel is called Nancy Boys. I started a community for LGBT horror fans about 5 or 6 years ago. And I really just want to sort of expand that out and reach the masses a bit more. Predominantly going to be doing mostly horror film reviews on this channel. But I love location scouting. I love visiting film locations, horror film locations particularly. And I've done a lot of them in the US, but there are YouTubers out there doing all of that stuff. Whereas I want to do a lot of the kind of UK-based horror film locations, pop culture, true crime, things like that. Anytime I can get out and just go and film how things look now and all those kinds of things, that's sort of my strange little hobby on the side. So that will be kind of something that we'll be developing on this channel, in line with just regular reviews and me just checking in when I've been seeing stuff. I'm influenced by various horror YouTubers, and I'll talk about them at some point. But yeah, I have some, I'd love to do some ranking videos and start really sharing my thoughts on horror. It's been a big part of my life for the last 40 years. Always loved it. Always looking for that next one that gives me that scare or something else, just something a bit different. So one to look out for is we'll be doing an American Werewolf in London location video. We are heading to Wales in a few weeks to film that. I say we, so my little community of fellow Nancy boys will be joining me on that trip, and you'll get to meet them over the sort of coming weeks and months. I'm hoping they'll be popping up regularly in my videos. You can like and subscribe if you want. There's probably not much point at the moment because I have one video, and but yeah, there will be more coming. So if you're interested in horror, as I said, as a gay man, I kind of like to give that LGBT view, but that's kind of not the only angle. And actually, it doesn't always come up. It's not always relevant. I'm not going to shoehorn sort of LGBT references into everything. I just want to kind of share my love of horror. But yeah, things will come up where actually there's a really good queer angle. And I mean, M3GAN was a great place to start because it's campus tits, but it does it so well. So thank you all for watching. Thank you for watching my first live stream, and I will catch you all soon.